be ready to be inspired and encouraged. I'm your host, Charuka Arora, an artist, designer, entrepreneur, and founder of Arts to Hearts project. Thank you so much for being here. Let's jump right in. Before we dig into this episode, I quickly wanted to share with you about our first ever interview open call. Yes, every month we will be releasing a special themed podcast issue from our selected artists from our podcast interviews call for artists. The current theme of this open call is Garden of Nostalgia. You can simply visit www.arts2heartsproject.com and find all the details on how to apply. The open call ends on April 6, 2021, so apply soon. Welcome to the Arts to Hearts podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for coming.
Hi, Sharuka. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited. This is actually my first podcast ever, so this is awesome.
We've been talking to each other for close to a year now. I really wanted to bring her on the podcast because I really feel like she has a very strong message and a story to share, and she has some valuable insights to share for a lot of us. Look at her CV, you'll know what I'm talking about. So, for the first time when I actually saw, I was blown away. I was blown away with the amount of work she's shown and the amount of residency she's been doing, and in a very short span of time. Lizzie, please introduce yourself to our audience, share about what you do.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much for that introduction. My name is Lizzie. I am a fine artist. I'm currently living in South Florida, where I grew up, and I mostly make abstract paintings, prints, mixed media, and I also work installation based, and I've done a few murals.
Wow. Lizzie, can you talk about a little bit about what kind of work do you make and what it is about?
Yeah, so if you look at my portfolio, it changes a lot, but the constant theme within my work is definitely inspired by all things ocean and abstraction and color.
You know, when I actually following you initially, I think in the last year, I saw your work and I was like, I always loved it. It was this bright, peaceful, also, I would say, but really positive work. I did not know the story behind those work, but when I saw your statement, I was totally blown away. I was blown away with how beautifully you have like translated your concept and your inspiration in such a beautiful visual language. And I felt more connected to your work even more when I read your statement. So Lizzie, can you also just share a little bit about how were you as a kid? Where did you grow up? Were you the artsy kid or not?
So it's funny, growing up, I think I was inherently artsy because I've always been very sensitive and intuitive, but I didn't actually ever create art other than just the normal amount of art that kids create. I never really felt called to it or thought that I was an artist. It wasn't until high school where I started getting a little bit more creative with some photography, and then I actually didn't really start making art until I was 18. It was kind of a pivotal moment when I started making art in college, my freshman year of college. That's kind of when it all started.
Do you have anyone in your family who's been into the arts or anywhere creative, or are you the first one?
I think I have family members who are creative in other ways, but in my immediate family, I would say I'm definitely the only artist.
When was the first time you realized that you really wanted to be an artist, actually? Because I think this is a very special moment for all of us, and it's not as subtle we can pinpoint. But I feel like sometimes we would eventually come to a point where we subconsciously realize, oh, yes, this is who we are.
Yeah, so I went to college, the University of North Florida, and I was an English major. And my freshman year in the dorms, my roommate was actually, her name's Juliana, one of my closest friends. She was doing some drawing homework. And I remember looking at her and being like, that's your homework? You're actually drawing for homework? She was like, yes. She's like, it's amazing. You need to take an art elective, Lizzie. You would love it. And I was like, no, like, I'm not an artist. But she wound up convincing me, and I took my first art class, which was 2D design, and I was absolutely hooked. I loved being in art class, and it just was a completely different challenge that I'd never experienced before. So then I just continued to take art electives until one day I just realized that I'm going to change my major to art and I'm going to do something with this. I don't know what or how, but I have to, because this is the best I've ever felt, and this is the most interested in any topic I've ever been interested in. So yeah, I did a study abroad and I actually went to Italy, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll do art history, but I still had this urge to, carry a sketchbook with me everywhere I went. So yeah, it got to a point where I need to just, if I'm gonna invest in having an art major, I need to figure out what I'm gonna do with it.
When I actually realized like I wanted to be an artist, and I was like, will I be paid to draw and paint? I mean, that sounds like the best life I could ever think of.
I know, truly is.
It truly is, but it's also like it's not the whole truth, honestly, because like it's not exactly the only part of being an artist. There's so much that goes behind the scene that people don't understand. I feel like ever since I started staying it with my parents, they've understood a lot of things that I do being an artist, but before that they really did not understand what I was and what I was doing. But it's far away from truth that as an artist it's just about sitting in a corner and just painting.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes behind it. I've learned everything from finance to marketing to photography to you name it. It's like we're a one-man team.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So, Lizzie, your work is a very unique combination of art, science, and collaboration. I feel like these three elements really come together. And since I know you, I know how much you love collaborating with projects, and I know a lot of very interesting projects that you've worked on. But before we touch on that, I just wanted to understand. I really believe that our growing up really impact our practice and where we are today. And I feel like something as intimate and as close as climate, I'm sure that your growing up would have been something that has impacted you and your work in such a big way. Were you always so concerned about the climate?
Yeah, so growing up near the ocean, I obviously got to see it a lot. And when you're a child, you don't really realize that not everyone has the same experiences. You don't really realize geography and that not everyone is near the ocean all of the time. So I guess I probably took it for granted. It wasn't until I moved to Arizona for grad school, had a lot of time to think about my practice. I was at ASU to get my MFA. And in that time, I think just being away from the ocean and being so landlocked, I really reflected on my relationship with the ocean. And that's when my experience with scientists and collaborations really began.
Yeah, now that you're talking about, it's such a different and such a aspirational combination, actually, and I feel like both have so many different things to offer. Like as an artist, we're someone who's extremely emotionally driven but converted into visual language, whereas scientists are analytics, data, and visualization. But question is basically how challenging was it for you to reach out to these scientists, work with them, because I'm sure it must have not been easy.
Yeah, so just to give a little background about my work, for those of you listening, I have partnered with some scientists to create paintings inspired by data. I have done some projects based on the sea level rise issue on the East Coast. We have the coral reef decline. I've done some projects about that and also seafloor mapping in the past few years. So, to answer your question, it was a little daunting at first because I was nervous that I wouldn't be able to understand. Like, I'm not a scientist by any stretch of the means. And I would just reach out to scientists. I would listen to podcasts and I would introduce myself, just say I'm an artist and I'm interested in your work. And for the most part, the response I got was just so welcoming. Some of these scientists would send me over their publications, their research, their data, their images, different podcasts to listen to. Some even invited me into their studios to see what they're working on. So it was just a really beautiful, magical way for two people who are passionate about the same thing to connect and create magic.
Wow, scientists opening up their spaces and welcoming you, that's also really warming, and it's also very encouraging because I feel like artists have a very important role to play in our society. And for that matter everyone, but I feel like we have a very strong emotional intelligence, and the empathy that we can add can really change a lot of things. Another question that I really want to ask is that right now, as you mentioned that you are working on the coral reefs and the impact of it. Would you talk about a little bit more on when did you realize about this situation? Was this like a particular moment? Was it something that did you grow up looking at, and now that you felt like you needed to take in charge and do something about it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, Florida is a very interesting state in terms of its vulnerability right now. It's one of the states that get hit with climate change the quickest and the most dramatically. So, when I was in grad school, a lot of my work was very abstract and it was more emotional based. And I was basically using the changes that I've observed in the climate as metaphors for just more or less the human experience, loss, grief, all of the range of emotions that humans can feel. And it was funny because grad school studies, a lot of my professors would, they would talk to me and they'd be like, your work is about climate change. And I was like, no, it's not because I'm not a scientist. Like, I can't talk about science. Like, it's just this feeling that, like, I don't know enough about climate change, I guess. And it wasn't until 2017 I went to this residency in Iceland and I had this really powerful moment with my friend where we were just sitting watching the glaciers in this big lagoon and one of them just like cracked right in front of us and just seeing something that powerful, I mean, it was like the
Wow.
loudest thing I've ever heard, and her and I just looked at each other like blankly. And in that moment, like not in that exact moment, but after, I was writing a poem about it and I made paintings called The Fragility of Happiness, and just thinking about the fragility of our climate. And I started realizing, I'm like, my work is about climate change. Like it really is. And so then I just started researching more. And that's when I started listening to more podcasts and just really educating myself. I watched every documentary on everything that has to do with climate change. And that's when I started reaching out to scientists and I started propelling myself forward into this role of just empowering myself and learning. Like, we see what's going on, but to really learn what's being done about it and how everything, including politics and everything goes into it, is just really empowering. So it definitely affects my work. But yeah, that's kind of how it all got started.
Awesome. That sounds really interesting. Were you someone like, who was always interested in, maybe geography or maybe science in your work, that also the understanding of these subjects is extremely important?
Yeah, that's a good question. To be honest, I don't think I ever was. And I don't think that's a fault of my own. I think it's a flaw in our education system.
Absolutely.
Once you talk to people who are down to earth and are willing to take the time to explain things to you, and not just explain to you like terms and definitions, but actually like in practice what's going on, how it's affecting things, what they're doing. It's just, I'm telling you, like, I learned so much from just conversations with scientists who just break down simple language, what's going on. And it's just a game changer because I think we look at data and science and it can just seem like so intimidating to understand. So to answer your question, no, honestly, like I never in a million years thought I would be interested in science, which is I think why I just was so reluctant to say that my work was about climate change.
Okay, so what was your earliest memory of creating art?
My first memory of being super creative was probably in high school, like early high school years. I got a Holga camera. I'm not sure if any of you listening or if you know about Holga cameras, but they were really popular when I was in high school. And I would just load it with film and then I would do weird things to like rig it to kind of do double exposures. And I would just ride my bike up to Walgreens and get the photos developed. And they always looked like so interesting, and like how you can just manipulate the camera and the film. And then I would always get like Polaroids, and I just always have loved photography. I think that and music was the most creative part of my childhood. But yeah, I wasn't making art until I was around 18.
Wow. Okay, so as this is the Arts to Hearts podcast, I always want to initiate a lot of conversations that are a little difficult, probably, but I think all of us need to talk more and more about this. What I actually wanted to ask you, that I know that you did graduate from an art school. You also did your MFA, and there's a lot of discussion that keeps happening about investing so much of money because, of course, doing an MFA or an arts degree does cost a bomb, and a lot of people have apprehensions about clarity because there's a lack of transparency about these topics. And I just wanted to ask you about your experience in being college and how did you navigate yourself from that point to where you are today?
Well, I just graduated not too long ago, less than 2 years ago, so I'm still navigating it. But I can speak on behalf of my experience and my advice. I would definitely say it's not for everyone, but I think that it's an individual choice. So I wouldn't want to persuade anyone either way. I love the people I've met in grad school and the things I've learned, but I just think that we're in a different time now where there's so much information we can learn on the internet. There's so many courses. You can learn art in so many other modes. And I think that the MFA system and the academia system in the US is just a little off right now, in my opinion. So I don't say that you shouldn't do it. I just think you should really research it and really pinpoint the reasons on why you want to go. Because I think that a lot of people go for maybe the wrong reasons. And I just think there's other alternative methods of learning. Most of the things that I've learned that have made me successful, I've learned on my own. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that in today's time, being a self learner, being taking in charge of what you want to be and making things happen for yourself, and it may not be easy, but we have to strive. We can't just keep waiting for opportunities to come to us. We need to either reach out to them or create them for ourselves. Another thing that now that you're talking about that, you're saying that you graduated, let's say 2 years ago, but if someone is going to have a look at your CV, may not believe that because the amount of work that you've already shown, the amount of residencies that you've already done, it's a lot of work. And I feel like a lot of us struggle with finding the right opportunities to applying at places and to find take a work there in a more mainstream manner, I would say, like in terms of exhibitions and residencies and grants. You've recently been also awarded a grant. Would you also like to talk about that and just share with our audience what are the best ways that you've been able to navigate this for yourself?
yeah, thank you for that. It definitely takes a lot of inner self-determination. It's not like luck. It's a lot of hard work to just apply. A lot of people have the art, but then it takes it a step further of how do you get the art out there. So I've definitely applied to a lot of opportunities. I've gotten a lot of rejection letters, but there have been some amazing opportunities that have come in between those rejection letters that I'm really grateful for. So yeah, my advice is to just make the work that you love and put it out there for the world to see. And the people who love it just as much as you do, they will find you. And sometimes it takes time, but they will. And yeah, it's just important to obviously like have good images and have a good artist statement, but all of those things you can work on along the way and just it'll keep growing with time. And just you have to not only make the work, but you have to figure out a way to get the world to see it. And a lot of that is applying to opportunities, which takes time, but it's always so worth it.
It feels like a full-time job in itself, honestly.
Yeah, it is. But the good news is that once you get to a place, like I'm at a place right now where I'm not applying to things as much and I'm having more people come to me with commissions, which is nice. So I think those first like 5 years, like I was applying to everything and anything and it just really propelled me and I learned so much throughout that whole process. So it's there's just a sea of opportunities out there and I think that like just applying and navigating that is just something that is just so exciting.
Yeah, and I do agree to that. I also feel like we are in this system where we feel like, at least I can say that for myself, and where like in India, we are in this constant struggle. Like, when I was in high school, the moment that our high school was coming to an end, I was like, I had this pressure that I had to quickly get into a college and not like skipping a year or like taking time to decide what I wanted to do was not a norm, and it was not appreciated in a way, like socially and whatever. And I feel like, at that point, if I taken the time out to think about what I wanted to do, maybe I would have taken this decision a little earlier than I did now. And also, like, even after that, I quickly, after my doing my graduation, I decided to do my post graduation. And I feel like oftentimes we're in this hamster wheel where the academia wants us to, hop on from one place to another, one college to another, one degree to another, and not actually wait for the time. Because had I done that degree, maybe taking a gap of a few years, maybe I would have taken another one, because I would have known myself much better than I did at that point. And I feel like that is something that we really, really need to think about from now.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important to just slow down and yeah, it's not really fair to us when we're that young and we have to make these really quick life decisions. I think that there needs to be more space and time in between to explore and have life experiences because that's when you really figure out what you're meant to do and what you're meant to be.
Yeah. Was doing an MFA an instant decision for you, or you were pretty prepared for it? Were you sure about the major that you wanted to do in? Are you still continuing that in your practice?
I wanted to get my MFA to be a professor, which is no longer my career path. So it's been an interesting journey to figure out. But yeah, I was pretty certain that I wanted to get my MFA, and I think it helped me in a lot of ways. It helped me be more confident in talking about my work through all of the critiques and the structure of the program. Yeah, so my major was technically just art, and I'm still making art. So I've got that down. Um, yeah, I got my master's of fine art and yeah, I learned a lot and I met a lot of really great people along the way. So I'm definitely using a lot of the things I've learned through that program to this day for sure. Look at the whole picture and look at also like alternative options for learning. Just because I think right now learning is, even with the pandemic, like everything's changed and there's so many platforms to grow and learn and grow your network. So I definitely think it's right for some people, but I think for some people it might not be. So
Makes sense. This is probably my most favorite question, and I think I ask this to myself I don't know how many times a day, and I ask to all my favorite people. I may have asked you this also, because we keep in touch, but I'm going to ask this again. We know that making art is something, we really want to do, but it comes with a lot of fluff. Like, there's sometimes you're making for an exhibition, sometimes you're doing a commission, sometimes you're doing for maybe a new series or something like that. What I feel like, what if nothing was there? Like, if there's no exhibition, if you had no motive to create, even then, what would bring you out of bed and give you the encouragement and the motivation to make art? What is that anchor that really keeps you motivated to make the work that you're making, no matter what?
well, I think that's a good question. And I feel like, as cliche as this may sound, I feel like it is the ocean. Like when I am swimming in the ocean or even just thinking about the mysteriousness of it, the beauty of it, if I'm understanding your question correctly, that would be my answer. That's what would keep inspiring me.
We can't move ahead unless we have that kind of motivation.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that is what drew me to art, is my pure love of creating. It wasn't until I started, posting things and people wanting to buy and there was this like supply and demand that it just became a business. I never in a million years thought I would
Yeah.
run an art business. It just happened because of my love of that feeling of creating every day.
You've done a lot of residencies, and because of the residencies, I'm sure you've got to travel a lot. And when we're also talking about climate, oceans, and all the things, I suppose the experience of doing these residencies must have added a very different take on your practice. Would you like?
Yeah, definitely. So I've done a couple awesome residencies. One of my all-time favorites was an Artist at Sea residency with Schmidt Ocean Institute. And I actually got to fly to San Diego and I boarded a research vessel, which was such an honor. And on that vessel, there was a couple other artists and scientists and a bunch of amazing crew members that I got to meet. And we actually um, went up the coast, up north to Oregon, and we actually mapped a part of the seafloor that had never been mapped. So in that moment, I'm in the control room with the scientists, and there's a big screen on the TV, and she tells me, this is something that nobody's ever seen before. Like, we were mapping a part of the earth that had never been mapped. And when I learned about how they make these
Wow.
topographic maps, um, they're, well, bathymetry, they're like underwater topographic maps. All of the colors and the lines that are used, and how the scientists basically associate meaning with the color and the lines, which is basically what data output is. I just found this direct correlation with my work and abstraction, and just in general how artists, we create meaning through visual language, which is essentially the same thing that scientists do. So that was very pivotal for me, and I continued to seek out opportunities that involve those types of collaborations. And yeah, another residency I did was in Hawaii, which was amazing. I did one in Iceland. I've done one in Key West. So I like to be on islands when I do artist residencies.
Awesome. Okay, so another question that I have is that what do you feel is your biggest challenge being an artist, and what do you feel is the part that you love the most about being an artist?
So I would say my biggest challenge would, I think, just be navigating the business side of it, especially like learning what I've learned in the academic side, and kind of knowing what to sift through that and what to leave behind moving forward with running a small business. That can be a little challenging, and it's definitely a struggle to this day. My favorite part is definitely, aside from creating the work, I think seeing where the art lives beyond its life with me, and seeing collectors have it in their space and just choose to wake up and look at that every day is just so honoring, and it lights me up every single day. And every time I hear that somebody like has a painting that they love of mine, it just makes me so happy. So that would definitely be my favorite part.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. Now I am to my most favorite part. I am a big time podcast listener. I always love podcasts. And one thing that always left me, whenever a podcast used to end and I felt like, oh no, I really wanted to know this artist more. I wanted to know who she is. Sometimes it's not only the work that you're also interested in the person who's making that work. And that really resonates with what they're making. To have a fun game in this interview where we'll ask you a set of questions. Basically, I'll ask you a set of questions, our audience a little more insight on who you are as an artist and as a person, so that they can connect with you on a deeper level.
Yes.
This sounds okay to you? Okay,
Hmm.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, I've heard these before on podcasts. I'm super excited. I've always wanted to do one.
So I'll ask you these questions and you have to be really quick, okay? And you'll just give me anything that comes to your mind when you hear this, okay? 1, 2, 3, here we go. One thing you want to convey through your art.
Energy.
What's one word that describes you the best?
Sensitive.
If you could have a studio anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Hawaii.
Wow. Your biggest source of inspiration.
The ocean.
Name one woman artist that you are loving currently.
Sarah Kane.
I'm going to link her in the show notes. Your go-to person when you are in trouble or you need advice.
My mom.
Yay, shout out to moms. Okay, so this is a little elaborate, but you could take a few more words. Your favorite moment as an artist.
I would say being in Croatia with one of my mentors, Louise, on a workshop, and just being in a scenic environment, just making watercolors. It's just a memory that always comes back to me over and over.
How beautiful that would have been. Okay, if you were to meet younger Lizzie today, what advice would you give her?
I would tell her, don't be insecure. You're awesome, and you're going to do amazing things.
I'm going to say that to you again today also.
Thank
You're
you.
awesome.
I need it all the time.
Okay, last. One or many artists that are currently on your heart list that you're loving.
Cami, Lily, Caroline, and Louise.
So I'll link all of these artists on the show notes of the episode. Thank you so much, Lizzie. This has been such a great, great interview. I really had a great time, and I can't thank you enough for being here and for everything that you're doing. You're such a beautiful soul, and I always feel so inspired. And you've been such a great support and a partner. I'm just so fortunate to have you on the podcast today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Ruka. You are such a good friend. You're an amazing artist as well, and I'm so happy that our paths have crossed, and thank you for having me. This was super fun.
Before we go, I have just one last question. Where is your heart taking you these days? Where do you feel are you heading now? Do you have any new projects that you want to talk about that we can support you in?
So, yeah, right now my heart is just leading me to learning more about my current practice and my business and paint more, I do have a project that's really exciting. I just recently got a grant from a gallery called ArtServe, and I have a project called 1000 Ocean Memories, where I'm actually taking submissions from my community of photos that people have taken of the ocean, and I'm going to create a large photographic collaborative mural in the gallery. So I will give you the link to that. And if anyone listening wants to submit, it's actually going to be an ongoing project. So even if you're listening to this months from now, the link will still be live, and I'm going to be accepting photos until I reach 1,000, which might take a very long time. So that's what I'm working on currently.
I hope it doesn't take that long, definitely. But that sounds so interesting. I'm definitely going to take that link and I will add that onto the show notes. And definitely, I encourage all of us to share our inputs. And I'm sure you'll spin it off beautifully. And I can't wait to see the result.
Thank you so much, Sharuka. I can't wait to see all the other podcast interviews you do.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Love it.
Okay, Lizzie, can you also quickly share where we can find you, where we can follow you, and keep updated about everything that you're doing?
Yes, of course. I update the most on Instagram. My handle is at LIZZYTABER_ Lizzie and my website is www.lizzietabor.com.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Lizzie. I really appreciate your support and your time, and I hope you have a great time as well. I am going to look forward to everything that you're doing, and I hope to talk to you again super soon.
Yes, me too. I love you, Sharuka.
Love you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. You can find all the details and links mentioned in the show notes of this episode available on www.arts2heartsproject.com. And if you like this episode, please don't forget to tag us in your stories and leave us a review here on iTunes or any of your favorite platforms. It really helps us to keep the show going. Thank you so much. I'm sending you lots of love and I can't wait to be back here soon again. Bye.